What's up everyone, Kaze no What If is here with What If One Piece characters reacted to One Piece openings. Before we start, if you like the video, like it, share with your friends, comment, and let's start the video. Asterisk disclaimer. I do not own anything One Piece related, that belongs to Oda asterisk. Of course things go wrong when things are just looking good for Law. Just as he was about to propose an alliance with Straw Hat Luffy, a bright light appeared out of nowhere, and everything went black. When he woke up he almost had a panic attack looking at all the different people in the room he awakened from. The room was pretty spacious with different types of chairs and couches. There was also a large black rectangle in front, facing the seats that looked really comfortable to Law. He had to take a moment and calm himself, when he realized he was the only one awake, thank God. As he observed the powerful unctuous bodies, he spotted pink feathers, and immediately tried to attack him. Keyword tried. When he tried to activate his devil fruit power, nothing happened. That's when he noticed that Kikoku was missing. When he tried to use other means to try to dispose of the feathered freak, an invisible force held him back, and prevented him from moving any further. So, that leads him to where he is now, silently watching the other occupants in the room that Laws tried to escape from, only to find out that there's no exit. He's slightly worried when the others will wake up, because he knows it's not going to be a pretty sight. Laws just hoping, for when they wake up, that the invisible force will work on them too. As if on cue, he heard a low grunting, and immediately tensed. It seemed like everyone decided they wanted to wake up together, because everyone was slowly opening their eyes, and looking around. He did not want to be the center of these strong, and possibly insane people's attention, so he tried to hide himself against one of the walls in the room, and watched the others try to figure out what was happening. "What the hell, where the hell am I?" asked an angry redhead. Law immediately cringed when he noticed that it was Eustace Kid who shouted. He was glad he wasn't in his shoes right now. Thankfully, Eustacia seemed to understand his situation once he looked around the room and noticed the overpowered people in the room, and immediately tried to access his devil fruit power with no success. Law noticed that Eustacia looked around the room in confusion, and a little fear before his eyes settled on Law. He seemed a little relieved, and made a beeline for him, and Law couldn't blame him. He himself was secretly reassured that someone of the same power level was with him, but would never admit it out loud. As Eustacia made his way to Law, he took note that the others in the room didn't notice Eustacia move or ignored him in favor of figuring out where they were, which he was thankful for. When Eustacia reached him, he didn't say a word and they both watched the conflict that was about to erupt. Really, I think I had one too many drinks last night, because I'm pretty sure we were on the Oro Jackson when we went to bed. Don't worry, you're not going mad, Captain. We were definitely on the Oro Jackson. Then explain why we are in a room, full of random people. Oh hey look, it's Newgate. You're right, I wonder if he has any idea how we got here. Hey Newgate. Do you know what's going on or how we got here? Oh Roger, of course you would, me in the middle of this mess, and no, I don't know what's going on. I was on the Moby Dick last time I checked. It seems like we're in the same boat. Aw, that sucks. Oh, hey Marco. Hey. There was an awkward silence. It seemed the other individuals in the room were as baffled at the exchange as he was. Suddenly there was a bang, and everyone tensed and looked around for any threat. Everyone turned their heads towards the noise and noticed a puff of white smoke was above their heads and a piece of paper was falling from it. Everyone watched as it gracefully floated down and landed in the Pirate King's hands. He seemed to make a decision in his head, because he nodded to himself and unfolded the piece of paper and read it. There was a tense silence, then, whack. Ow. Really, what was that for? Read it out loud, dumbass. Oh. The Pirate King cleared his throat and read. Welcome everyone. I know y'all are confused and wondering what's going on. There were some scoffs and grunts, in agreement or in exasperation, Law didn't know. I have gathered you all here for an important viewing, but first, as I'm sure you've noticed, there are some people here that are from different times. So, first things first, I need y'all to introduce yourselves, and tell what time period you're from. And please just cooperate, because I don't have time for you complaining about how you're busy or you could be doing something more important than this. In any case, time has momentarily stopped from the outside world, so there should be no complaining. And before you ask how I am able to do this, let's just say it's my devil fruit power. After you have introduced yourselves, another paper will appear and give y'all more details about what y'all will be doing. There was silence until. Okay, I guess I'll go first. My name is Gold. Roger, captain of the Roger Pirates, and I am from XXXX period, grinned an overly happy pirate king, considering his situation. Law guessed that's who he was, but he was still shocked when it was confirmed. It seemed that others in the room agreed with Law, because some people seemed to shift around in uneasiness. The next man rolled his eyes and stepped forward. I'm Rayleigh, first mate of the Roger Pirates, and I'm from the same time as him. There was less shuffling at the statement, but still some uneasiness. I'm Whitebeard, captain of the Whitebeard Pirates, and I'm from the same time. I'm Marco, and I'm the 1st Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. Marco looked really young, and it was really weird to see an almost naive look on the man, Law thought. I'm Monkey D. Garp, a Vice Admiral for the Navy, and I'm from after Marine Ford. Doflamingo, or Joker, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and I'm from the same time as the Marine. Law gritted his teeth as the feathered freak smirked, acting like nothing was wrong, and was just enjoying the show. He calmed himself down as the next person introduced themselves. I'm Shanks Dash. Shanks? Interrupted the Pirate King. What the heck, are you telling me that this man right here is also the little brat who was scrubbing my deck last night? Roger sounded totally confused and skeptical that this grown man, who's almost as tall as him, was his apprentice. As for the red-haired man, he looked exasperated if not a little embarrassed, and his old captain's outburst. Yes, Captain, that's me, grinned the red-haired man. As for Roger, he had a dumb expression on his face, while his first mate had a thoughtful one. Law was seriously doubting that this man was the Pirate King. As I was saying, I'm Shanks, one of the 4 emperors of the sea. Dash. What? How the hell did Dash whack? Roger, shut up, and let him finish or we will be here all day. Oh right, sorry. There was a moment of silence, then, please continue. Shanks looked exasperated, but there was some fondness in his eyes, then continued, I am from after Marine Ford. Kaido, captain of the Beast Pirates, one of the 4 emperors of the sea, same time. Law noticed that Kaido seemed very disinterested in what was going on. Mama, I'm Big Mom, captain of the Big Mom Pirates, one of the 4 emperors of the sea, and from the same time as Kaido. Suddenly all eyes went to Law and his shoulder buddy. He felt himself and Eustacia tense, and straightened up at all the judging eyes on them. Before Law could even say anything, Eustacia beat him to it, and he silently cursed the other, because that means he would have to go last. I'm Eustace Kid, captain of the Kid Pirates, and I'm from after Marine Ford. Everyone seemed underwhelmed by his title and appearance and moved their eyes to Law, and he thought he might as well get this over with. I'm Trafalgar Law, one of the 7 warlords of the sea, captain of the Heart Pirates, and from after Marine Ford. Law felt relief when he didn't have to speak anymore. Some of the others in the room eyed him, but eventually their attention was moved elsewhere when another piece of paper appeared out of nowhere and floated onto the Pirate King's hands. He cleared his throat and read. Okay, since we got that covered, we can move on. So, as I said before, y'all will be watching an important viewing. These viewings will show the past, present, and future, and don't act shocked, all of you have been to the New World, nothing's impossible. The viewing will show a certain pirate crew, and their journey. The viewing will be shown on the black rectangle on the wall, and y'all can sit down on those chairs and couches. The viewing will contain music, and footage of this pirate crew and their adventures. Also, there is no fighting. As some of you noticed, you cannot activate your devil fruit powers, and your weapons are gone. If you try other ways to inflict violence, then an invisible force will hold you back, and you will look dumb, while everyone else will laugh at you. Okay, have fun. Bye. There was another awkward silence then. Well, this is better than sitting in my office, so I'm in, said a clearly bored Garp. I wasn't doing anything either, and possibly watching the future sounds interesting. Red Hair Shanks said with a grin. Kadayoya suddenly moved towards the couches and Sharis, and plopped in a chair that somehow grew to fit his size and grunted, "Whatever." Roger Ya followed his example to the seats, and shouted, "Hey, Shanks. Come sit next to me and Rayleigh." Shanks Ya shook his head in exasperation, but started to walk towards his old captain, and sat next to him on one of the couches. It was a weird sight to see Red Hair Shanks being sandwiched between the Pirate King and Dark Silver's Rayleigh. They seemed to be happily talking together, acting like this was normal. "Gururera, let's go, Marco." Marco hummed an agreement and they sat on a couch next to the Roger trio. Garp sat in a chair a few paces away from them, and somehow found a package of crackers and was now happily chomping on them. Doflamingo was already seated in a chair near Kiadu, and Law made a note to sit far away from him. Big Mom was also seated in a chair near Kaido, and was also somehow snacking on some sweets. Eustacia and Law shared a glance, shrugged, and moved to a couch near the Roger trio. There was sounds of talking and crunching sounds of people eating. When did the note say what pirate crew we will be watching? Asked a confused Marco. Some people had a look on their face that said, "Why didn't I think of that?" But then Roger Ya spoke up and said, No, it didn't say," the Pirate King stated kind of dumbly. There was a ruffling sound and then an exasperated sigh. "Roger, there was a P.S. at the bottom of the note." Rayleigh Ya looked like he was about to end it all. As for Roger Ya, he had a sheepish smile on his face, and said a simple, "Oh." Rayleigh Ya rolled his eyes and read the note out loud. P.S. The pirate crew y'all will be viewing, are the Straw Hat Pirates. Bawa ha 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 ha, of course it's my grandson. Garp exclaimed loudly. Law himself was curious as to why it was Luffy Ya and his crew that would be shown. And it seemed that his couch buddy was confused, and possibly a little angered by this. Then Shanks Ya said something that shocked Law and some of the other occupants in the room. We will be watching Little Anchor, Ed." He seemed to have a fond look on his face. His couch mates had the same confused, but interested expression on their face when the Pirate King asked, "You know this pirate crew, Shanks?" "Well, I know their captain, Luffy," said Shanks Ya with a grin. Well, this was news to most of the people in this room. Red Hair continued, "I met him when he was just a kid, and I gave him my straw hat. He actually reminds me a bit of you, Captain," he said with a laugh. The pirates from the past looked interested, and Law was shocked to be informed that Luffy Ya's hat previously belonged to Red Hair Shanks. "Gah! If it wasn't for you, Red Hair, my grandson would have become a great marine," Garp Ya stated, but didn't seem to be too entirely upset about the matter. He seemed to accept that his grandson was a pirate, and nothing could change that. "Stop your squabbling, and let's get this over with," grumbled the captain of the Beast Pirates. Mama. I agree, let's start this viewing so I can go back to eating my treats. Although, I don't know what's so special about that straw hat," huffed Big Mom, "he only causes trouble, and he's just a pestering fly that I will soon crush, because he ate all my candy." Okay, Law did not know that Straw Hat already had an emperor on his bad side, and was now questioning his alliance proposal to Luffy Ya. Although it seemed Luffy had another one backing up, so he would wait on his decision until after this viewing was over. After all, it will show the future, and Law was curious to see what Luffy will do. Suddenly the lights dimmed, and everyone went quiet. Law guessed that the viewing was about to start, and was eager to know what will be shown. It seemed the others were too, because they all turned their eyes to the black rectangle. Chapter 2. Asterisk disclaimer. I do not own anything One Piece related. That belongs to Oda asterisk. I also recommend watching the opening before reading this. Law was really curious about what was about to be shown, and he could tell that the others in the room were too. He didn't have to wait long until the screen lit up. There were drums and some other instruments playing in the background, when the words One Piece showed up in a weird font that were red and yellow. Everyone kind of jumped at the sudden light and sound, but soon calmed down in order to see what would happen next. Law was curious on what the One Piece part meant, but pushed it to the back of his mind. A hand swept across the screen and displayed the execution of Gold. Roger, on a piece of parchment. Wait, is that me? Asked the man in question. Rayleigh looked shocked and confused, as did the other two pirates from the past. Not that Law could blame them. Unfortunately, Captain, that is you. Shanks responded with a remorseful look. Roger had a blank look on his face, then nodded to himself and said, well, it was gonna happen sooner or later. Almost everyone stared blankly at the man who just accepted the fact that he was going to die in his future, and didn't seem to be upset about it. They soon got over it and turned back to the screen. Law noticed that it looked frozen, so he concluded that if they wanted to talk or if there was an interruption, that the screen would freeze. The screen started up again and the image of Roger being executed panned to the left while a voice narrated. Wealth, fame, power. Gold Roger, the king of the pirates, attained everything this world had to offer. The parchment that was panning left, next showed a crowd witnessing the execution of the pirate king while the voice continued. The words he uttered just before his death drove people to the seas. Law had to admit that this was surreal to see. He himself was alive when the pirate king was executed, but too young to remember the event. He could tell that some of the others in the room were also a little weirded out by the display. So far, none of the Straw Hats have popped up, and he was a little curious on why they haven't, but Law guesses he will find out soon. The screen pans over to a close-up on a disheveled-looking Roger as he says, "My treasure? If you want it, you can have it. Find it? I left everything this world has to offer there." "Of course you would say something like that, Roger," Rayleigh said, shaking his head with a fond, and slightly sad look. Roger had a grin on his face, then frowned and said, "It's a little weird to hear my own voice. Do I always sound like that?" Roger had a thoughtful look on his face. His couch buddies decided ignoring their captain was the best option, and turned back to the screen, as did everyone else. The music was crescendoing while the screen showed sails that are being untied on a variety of ships, as the narrator from before continued. And so men head for the Grand Line in pursuit of their dreams. The screen showed different ships sailing on the ocean blue. The world has truly entered a great pirate era. Wow, I started a whole era. That's pretty cool. Shut up, Roger. The music seemed to be at its peak and a voice started to sing. "We're going to gather up all our dreams." The screen showed a smiling, Straw Hat Luffy, running towards the screen, up a hill, and jumping off of said hill, into the shape of a star. HMPF. A sound next to Law grunted. He looked over at Eustace, and saw that the man had an annoyed look on his face. "Don't like Straw Hat yet?" Law asked curiously with a low voice in order not to draw attention. Eustace side-eyed him before saying, "He's a naive fool, is all." Law hummed to himself before he noticed that another conversation was going on. "So, that's the kid you gave your hat to?" Roger asked with a spark in his eye. Da ha ha ha, yup. He's grown up since the last time I saw him. Shanks Ya seemed to have a fond look in his eyes, as if he was remembering a distant memory. Well, I'm interested to see what he does on his journey, hummed the Pirate King. The man next to him nodded in agreement, and turned their eyes back to the screen. The images rapidly showed Luffy's crewmates, Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji, and set out in search of something to find. Back at Luffy, he used his devil fruit power to stretch one of his arms to the Going Merry. The screen showed a smiling Luffy falling towards the screen while holding his straw hat, so it wouldn't fly away. The screen showed the words One Piece with Luffy's pirate mark in the title, with a map in the background. One Piece. I'm guessing he has a devil fruit power then. Marco stated more than asked, what type is it? Law knew the answer, but didn't say anything. He did not want to speak up if he didn't have to. It's the gum gum fruit, and it's a paramecia type, and I should know because it was my fruit before Anchor ate it. Red Hair said with a deadpan stare. Law had a feeling that he was going to keep getting surprises today. Gah ha 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 ha. I like this kid already. Roger Ya said with a wide grin. The screen showed the Going Merry sailing on the ocean blue while sea kings emerged from the water before diving back in. Compasses only cause delays, delirious with fever I take the helm. The scene switched to the front of the Going Merry. Luffy was hanging off the head, upside down, while his crewmates were standing behind him smiling. If the dusty treasure map has been verified. The screen pans closer to Luffy's face as he smiles at the ocean. I like this song, it's very catchy. Roger Ya nodded sagely. Me too, I think it fits Luffy and his crew very well. Shanks Ya also said in the same tone. Rayleigh Ya just rolled his eyes at their antics. Law would never admit it, but the song was pretty catchy. He thinks Popo would like it. He wishes he was with his crew right now, instead he was here, in between all these legends. The scene changed to a landscape view of a map, while somehow the Going Merry was sailing on it, and moved like a cartoon. It's not a legend. The scene changes to Zoro fighting with his swords, and bandana on, sending his opponents flying. When it comes to personal storms. Then to Sanji kicking his opponents, while smoking, and also sending them flying. Simply ride aboard someone else's biorhythm. Next, to Usopp using his slingshot, and shooting an egg at his singular opponent. Then Nami hits Usopp's opponent with her staff on his head. And pretend it isn't there. A Sea King, the one that chopped off Shanks' arm, swims toward the screen before Luffy uses his devil fruit power and punches it. Even though there's 5 of them, they seem strong in their own way. Rayleigh Ya pointed out. Humph, they seem pretty weak to me. Kaido Ya grunted to Law's right. Considering that Luffy and his crew were in the East Blue, they were pretty strong, but now they are stronger than they ever were. Red Hair stated from Law's left. Mama. You seem pretty confident in the boy, Red Hair. Big Mom accused. Law could feel the tension rise. He wished that he wasn't sitting in between the feud, and it seems that his couch buddy agrees with him by the way he was shifting in his seat. Hey. I'm trying to watch my grandson, Garp said with a cracker in his mouth, fight later. Surprisingly that worked, because everyone turned their eyes back to the screen. The next scene rapidly showed people that were shadowed, which were Buggy, Kuro, and Don Krieg. The scene changed to the Straw Hat standing on the deck of the Going Merry before Luffy jumps down, and stands up with a smile. We're going to gather up all our dreams. The next scene rapidly showed people that were shadowed, which were Arlong, Alvida, Smoker, and Dragon. Did anybody see who those shadowed people were? Marco Ya said, squinting at the screen. No, Shanks Ya shook his head, it moved too fast for me to see any details. Law had a pretty good idea of who they were based on the members of Luffy Ya crew, and the fact that this was in the East Blue. He debated on whether or not he should say anything. Well, he can't stay quiet forever, so might as well get comfortable with the idea that he was going to have to talk to these intimidating figures sooner than later. Law cleared his throat before saying, "They're probably the people Straw Hat Ya defeated in the East Blue." Law directed his answer towards Marco Ya, because he felt the easiest to talk to. Law felt several eyes on him, and he knows it's probably because they didn't expect him to talk, and tried to ignore it. Marco looked at him with a suspicious glance before nodding in thanks. There was an awkward silence then. "You're Trafalgar Law, right?" asked Red Hair suddenly, with a calculating look. Law didn't know what else to do but nod, so he did. Shanks Ya hummed to himself, and Law felt himself tense up. Shanks Ya looked back at him, grinned, and said a simple "Thanks." Law noticed that the others in the room were confused, especially Red Hair's couch mates, but didn't ask any questions. He himself had a pretty good idea why Shanks Ya said that to him, and it was probably because he saved Luffy Ya after Marineford. Law nodded to the red-haired man, and he then turned back to the screen, and that was the end of it. He could still tell that the others were confused and a little intrigued before they turned their eyes to the screen. The screen showed the Straw Hat's flag flowing in the wind, and set out in search of something to find. The next scene showed Luffy leaning on a barrel, spinning his straw hat on his finger, with the sea behind him. "A coin in my pocket, and do you wanna be my friend?" The screen pans closer to Luffy's straw hat, before it turns into a grinning Shanks wearing it, and his crew show up with him, with a white background. "Hey look, Shanks, it's you," Roger Ya said with a big grin. As for Shanks Ya, he looked a little shocked to see himself on the screen. "Yeah, I guess you're right." Law hopes he isn't in any of these videos. The screen switched to Luffy grinning in the front, while Nami and Zoro are behind him, also grinning. "We are." The screen switched to Sanji smoking, smiling, and Usopp next to him, also smiling. "We are." The screen showed the Going Merry sailing away on the ocean blue. On the cruise. The screen showed the words One Piece like it did in the beginning. "We are." The screen fades to black and the music stops. There was silence in case anything else was to start on the screen, but then the lights brightened and nothing else started on the screen. "Huh, I guess that was it," Roger Ya said. "Well, that was a really fun experience, I can't wait what else we will see." Rayleigh Ya, next to him, nodded in agreement. "Gururara. This brat looks interesting, like you said, Roger." Whitebeard sighed with an amused smile. Law didn't understand what was so interesting about Straw Hat Ya. "I mean, sure, he's impulsive, reckless, and strong, but they haven't seen that yet. Maybe it's because Shanks Ya gave the straw hat to Luffy Ya, or that he is a D, but Law doesn't know." "He looks irritating to me," said a voice that sent shivers down Law's spine. Everyone looked over at Doflamingo, who hadn't said a word since he introduced himself. "Oh yeah?" asked a curious Pirate King with an intense stare. "Have you met him?" "Once," grinned the feathered freak, "and from what I saw, he's the kind of guy that doesn't know when he's beat. Sure, he's got some power, but he's tied down to his feelings, and that makes him weak. He barges in without thinking, and doesn't know what he's getting himself into, and that will get himself killed." Doflamingo smirked, just like his brother. "Watch your mouth, brat," shouted an angry Garp. "Don't talk about my grandsons like you know them." HMHMHM, laughed a clearly amused warlord. "Like you have any room to talk, Vice Admiral. You didn't do anything when your family was going to be executed. You sat there and watched as your grandson got killed, and only then did you think you should step in, only to end up getting your face smashed into the ground." There was a tense silence. Garp seemed like he wanted to retort, but ended up keeping quiet. There was conflict in his eyes, as he seemed to stew in his thoughts. Law could tell the past pirates were confused by the exchange, and Shanks had a sad expression on his face. That's enough, Joker, Kaido said in a bored manner. Doflamingo didn't do anything, but smirked to himself. Law had to remind himself to stay calm. He just had to wait and be patient, and then he could start his plan. It was silent for a while, before the lights started to dim, and everyone turned their eyes back to the screen. Chapter 3 * Disclaimer. I do not own anything One Piece related, that belongs to Oda *. Law was uneasy as the silence continued on. He wanted the viewing to start, so the tension could melt away, but even though the lights dimmed, nothing showed up on the screen. Maybe something wasn't working, or they were finished. However, Law remembered that the note said that they would be watching viewings as in plural, so they couldn't be done yet. Just as the silence was becoming unbearable, a light showed up on the screen. Law was expecting to see Straw Hat Yat or some of his crew, but instead what he saw were words, which read, "Y'all will be watching something a little different from the last viewing. Y'all will be watching a fight that Straw Hat Luffy fought in the East Blue. There will also be some information about Luffy's crewmate. This fight is also what gave Luffy his first bounty, 30 million berries. So, I hope you enjoy it." Law was curious how they would be able to see a whole fight, but he guessed that's just this person's power. "At least this will be more entertaining," grumbled the Beast Pirate. Law had to agree. He was interested to see how Straw Hat Ya got his first bounty. He also wanted to know how Luffy Ya fought. It would help Law know how to work with him if he decided he wanted to make an alliance with him. "Well, I'm interested to see how Anchor uses his devil fruit powers," Shanks Ya said with his head tilted to the side, "and see the different types of people he's gathered for his crew." "Me too, I want to see this kid in action," Roger Ya said with a grin. Others seemed to agree, and they all turned their eyes to the screen. Suddenly more words showed up on the screen. "Before we start the viewing, I will give you some backstory and information, so you won't be totally confused. First, the man who Luffy will be fighting is a fishman named Arlong. He came to the East Blue to conquer it, and took over a village as his base. This village is actually the home to one of Luffy's crewmates, Nami." Law gritted his teeth. He knew where this was going. When Arlong took over, she was 10. For complicated reasons, Arlong killed Nami's mom, and kidnapped Nami. Arlong made a deal with Nami saying that if she could steal 100 million berries, then she could ensure her village's freedom. Nami agreed and became one of the Arlong pirates, and has been for 8 years. At first Nami's village thought she betrayed them, but soon found out that Nami joined Arlong to free them. Nami was close to getting all the berries, and Arlong didn't like that, so he broke their deal, and used a marine to confiscate all her stolen berries. Nami found out and tried to handle it herself by talking to Arlong, but he threatened to kill all the villagers. So, Nami could do nothing but agree, and start over to get 100 million berries. She went back to the village to tell them that everything was fine, and that they didn't need to worry. Instead, the villagers were angry and were planning to fight back. The villagers agreed that Nami did everything that she could to help them, but it was their turn to help. Nami tried to stop them, but they all ran past her to Arlong Park, and that is where this next viewing will pick up. Every word that Law kept reading, he could feel himself getting angrier. He had no idea that the navigator had to go through all that. She must have felt useless, and Law could relate to that feeling. That poor girl had to go through all of that, and her village will probably be slaughtered by the fishmen, too. Roger Ya said with a remorseful look. Hopefully, Luffy will be able to help her, and defeat Arlong. Shanks Ya said with the same tone. Roger Ya nodded in agreement. Law looked at them in confusion. Didn't they know that Luffy beat Arlong? The person showing them the screen said that at the beginning. Also, Nami is a part of Luffy Ya crew, so she's fine. Well, we do know that Luffy defeats him, since that's how he got his first bounty. Marco Ya said with a thoughtful look. I'm interested to see how that goes. Roger Ya and Shanks Ya looked over at Marco Ya with a look of disbelief. Rayleigh Ya face-palmed and shook his head at their stupidity. Law had no idea how the first mate could put up with their antics. He doesn't think he could. Good thing that his crew didn't act that unintelligent. They do have their moments, but not often. The words finally disappeared, and everyone turned their eyes to the screen. The screen showed Nami, with a look of fear in her eyes, and she was breathing heavily. She had a bloody knife in her hands, which she soon dropped, and made a clanking noise. Nami fell to her knees, with her head bowed so her hair shadowed her eyes. Nami had a distraught look in her eye, as the other was covered by her hair. "Nami doesn't look so good," said a worried Marco Ya. "Of course she's not dumbass, she just found out that her goal that was for nothing, and her whole village is about to be potentially slaughtered by fishmen." Law cringed when he heard that voice. He tried to scooch as far as possible from the person sitting next to him. There was silence as everyone's eyes focused on the person next to Law. For the first time since he introduced himself, at least out loud to the rest of them, Eustacia decided to speak up. Law agreed with what he said, but he didn't have to insult the first mate of the Whitebeard pirates. Marco Ya looked over, slightly startled by the new voice, but soon his face morphed into a look of confusion. What's your name again?" Eustacia's face grew into an agitated one, as he replied to Marco Ya's question, "It's Eustace, kid." "Oh," simply said the Phoenix. Eustace rolled his eyes, and turned back to the screen. Law didn't know what his problem was, but he knew that he didn't want to get dragged into it. Everyone seemed to get that the conversation was over, and turned their heads away from their couch. The screen slowly zoomed out to show Arlong's mark tattooed on Nami's shoulder. Suddenly a laugh is heard, and Arlong is shown behind Nami. As Arlong fades away, Nami looks at her shoulder, and clenches it with her hand. Nami heavily breathes in and cries, "Arlong!" Nami clenches the tattoo on her shoulder. She is trembling, and she sounds like she is about to cry. Then it shows Nami picking up the blade she dropped. "Arlong!" Nami's tattoo on her shoulder is suddenly being stabbed by the blade, and she immediately starts to bleed. There were some intakes of breaths, and hisses before. A wider view shows Nami on the ground stabbing herself, and she screams, "Arlong! Arlong!" She keeps stabbing herself, her face is in agony, while she cries. Law is horrified by what he is seeing. He had no idea that the happy and slightly temperamental navigator of the Straw Hats could be capable of something like this. Law really does feel for the girl. She was trapped, and when she was almost done with her goal, it got taken away from her, and now her village was possibly going to be annihilated. Law could understand what she's feeling, but as a doctor, he did not like seeing what Nami was doing to herself. "That poor child," Whitebeard Ya said with a sad look in his eyes. "Damn that Arlong," Shanks Ya gritted his teeth. "I hope Luffy kicked his ass all the way to the West Blue." Shanks Ya couchmates nodded in agreement with grim expressions on their faces. The scene continues to show Nami crying, stabbing herself, as she shouts Arlong's name. Nami's hand, the one with the blade, is about to swing down. "Arl!" But a hand stops her from doing so. It shows Nami startled from being stopped with tears running down her face, with a person standing behind her. Nami breathes heavily, before slowly turning around to see who it is, and it shows Monkey D. Luffy, with a blank expression on his face. There were some sighs in relief. Law was relieved when Luffy Ya stopped her. He did not want to see the navigator hurt herself anymore. "Good job, Luffy." Shanks Ya softly with a proud smile. "Luffy." The blade drops to the ground by both of their feet. It is silent as Nami sits in front of Luffy. Then finally, "What do you want? You don't even know anything." Luffy responds in a monotone voice saying, "Yeah, I don't know." Nami's hand clenches the dirt, while she says, "This has nothing to do with you." Nami starts throwing dirt behind her to hit Luffy, and says with a tremble in her voice, "I told you, leave the damn island already." She keeps throwing dirt, and Luffy doesn't move. Luffy responds again in a monotone voice, "Yeah. You told me." Law doesn't know why Straw Hat Yat is so nonchalant about this. There is a girl on the ground, crying, who also stabbed herself, and is losing a lot of blood. At least, give her some first aid. Law's doctor side is screaming right now. Nami fully breaks down, crying. Luffy just stares at her with a blank look. Nami takes her hand and covers her mouth, to try to muffle her cries. "Luffy." Nami drops her hand, and slowly turns her head towards the screen / Luffy. You can see the hopelessness and hopefulness in her eyes, and tears streaming down her face. "Help me." Luffy's eyes are shadowed. Suddenly, he walks by her, and puts his straw hat on her head. Nami has a confused look on her face as Luffy keeps walking. Luffy stops a few paces in front of her. You can hear Luffy inhale, gritting his teeth. "Of course I will." Luffy's screams seemed to echo off the walls in the room, and no one said a thing. You could hear the conviction in his voice. Nami looked shocked, but then it soon turned into relief, and tears started to stream down her face. Luffy walked back the way he came and past Nami, and she looked on in confusion. The screen zoomed out to show the rest of the crew, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp, and all of their eyes were shadowed. Then Luffy said with a hard stare, "Let's go." The screen showed the other three men, with also hard looks in their eyes, obeying their captain's orders. "Yeah." The final shot showed Nami crying, then the screen faded to black. Law was slightly in awe of the loyalty and friendship between the Straw Hats. It looked like they had just started out as a pirate group, and you could already see the bond between them. He knew that they were a different type of pirate crew, but it was definitely interesting to see. Though Law was a little upset that they left her on the ground, still bleeding. "Shanks, you found one of a kind," Roger Ya said with a proud smile. Shanks Ya also smiled in pride in himself, and his chosen one. "He does remind me of you, Roger," Rayleigh Ya said with a contemplative look. The Pirate King tilted his head to the side and closed his eyes in thought. He nodded to himself. "Yeah, you're right, Rayleigh, he does remind me of me." Law thought he sounded too proud of that fact. "I can't wait to see Luffy beat up that Arlong bastard," Marco Ya said with a glint in his eyes. The rest of the past pirates, and Shanks Ya, nodded in agreement. Law had to agree, he wanted to see some action too. "Then shut up so we can continue. I want to see my grandson kick ass." Well, it seemed Garp Ya was over the conversation from earlier. Marco Ya looked offended and was about to retort, before Whitebeard Ya put a hand on his shoulder. Marco Ya huffed and settled into his cushion. He seemed to get the idea, if a bit reluctantly, and faced his head towards the screen. Arlong is sitting on his throne at Arlong Park, when suddenly there is a loud bang coming from the gate. Arlong looks over in confusion. Another bang, and the doors start cracking, finally one last bang and the doors shatter. Well, he certainly knows how to make an entrance. Whitebeard Ya said with a small grin. "What?" Arlong asks in confusion. Luffy is seen walking through, and he asks, "Which one of you is Arlong?" Shanks Ya whistles. "Dang, I haven't seen Luffy this seriously mad before." He sounds impressed, Law thought dryly. Arlong looks pissed, as he confirms that he is Arlong. Luffy starts walking towards him while he says, "That's so. I'm Luffy." And, "Luffy, who are you?" "A pirate." Luffy answers as he still walks towards Arlong. He also gets down to business. Marco Ya smirked, clearly anticipating the fight that is about to happen. What business does a pirate have with me? Suddenly Luffy is gone and is right in front of Arlong, and punches him into the wall and the wall crumbles. There were some whistles. Law was impressed by Luffy's speed. He looked pretty strong even though he just started his journey as a pirate. Arlong is angry while he asks, "What do you think you're doing?" Now it's Luffy's turn to look angry as he replies, "Don't make our navigator cry." And the screen fades to black. Doing all this just because some girl cried. Kadayuya seemed to be annoyed by the thought, what a foolish reason. The other side of the room definitely disagreed with that statement if their glares were anything to go by, Law thought. The past pirates plus Shanks had irritated looks on their faces, but didn't think it was worth their time to retort, so they turned back to the screen. The screen lit up, and showed a new scene. There is a loud crash, and Luffy is seen crashing through a window and rolls into a room. Some people jumped at the loud noise, but soon they were more concerned for the person who crashed through the window. Arlong is seen, and looks a little bloody, smirks, and says, "Just curl up and sit, rubber bastard." Luffy is seen sitting in the middle of a room of maps. He has a lot of blood and bite marks on him, and he looks around and asks, "What's with this room? What the hell happened to Luffy?" Marco asked with a worried look. He is all bloody. He hesitated, squinting at the screen, before saying, "Are those bite marks? We probably skipped some of the fighting." Shanks stated, fidgeting in his seat, clearly worried for Luffy too. This is the room where she draws her maps. These are all the sea charts Nami has drawn in the past 8 years. You can search the whole world, but almost nobody's maps are as accurate as hers. Arlong smirks, "She's a genius." Really? Luffy looks over as a pen drops to the ground. Law saw that the pen was stained with blood, and he hoped he didn't think what he thought it was. There'd be nothing more foolish and pitiful than wasting her innate talents. Luffy picks up the pen with his hair covering his eyes as he states, "This pen is stained with blood. Damn." Law grits his teeth in anger. For Nami, continuing to draw maps here is the ultimate happiness. It's to fuel my ambitions. Arlong takes his weapon and moves it towards Luffy. The blades are on either side of Luffy's head, as he stares at the pen. He seems very unbothered that there is a weapon in front of his face. Shanks said with a deadpan stare, "Reminds me of someone I know," he said as he turned his head to one of his couchmates. Said couchmate didn't even seem to hear the other's statement, as he was still looking at the screen. A few moments passed, as almost everyone stared at the man. Roger shivered, turning his head to everyone's eyes. He had a confused look on his face. What? Some people huffed at him, some in annoyance and others in amusement, and turned their heads back to the screen. Arlong continues his speech. "Once she's revealed the entire world with her maps, we fishermen will have no more enemies, and the whole world will become my empire." There were some scoffs of amusement at the fishman's statement. Luffy's eyes are shadowed. "Really? Can you think of a better way?" Arlong smirks down at Luffy. "To use her?" There were some huffs of anger at Arlong's statement, and Law wouldn't deny that he was one of them. "Excuse me." Roger had a hard look in his eyes. Law could feel his aura from where he was sitting. It was like the pressure was surrounding him from all sides, and it was suffocating. Law was never the one to be claustrophobic, but he was starting to think he was. He certainly did not like this feeling of being trapped, not being able to move. Law thought this man was bipolar from the way his attitude completely did a 180. It seemed Eustacia was also having the same experience, because Law could see sweat starting to form on his brow. Did he say use her? Rayleigh put a hand on the Pirate King's shoulder, and the suffocating aura immediately vanished. The first mate whispered something in his ear, with a reassuring smile, and Roger nodded and seemed to calm down. Law let out a sigh of relief, as did his couch partner. Luffy drops the pen, and grabs the blade in front of his head, as Arlong grunts in amusement. Arlong suddenly has a look of confusion on his face as he thinks, what? It's not moving an inch. Arlong is seen trying to move his weapon, but is unable to do so. Luffy grits his teeth in anger, and crushes the blade with his hand. Arlong is shook, what? Luffy looks up in anger, use? Yes shrimp. Beat up that bastard. Roger Ya had an insane look in his eyes. Law was questioning this man's sanity. Shrimp? Asked an amused red-hair pirate. Roger Ya calmed down from his small burst of adrenaline, and looked over at his apprentice. He nodded with a blank look. Yeah, shrimp. Luffy. Roger Ya clarified when he received blank looks from his couch mates, he's shrimpy. The Pirate King defended. They seemed to think it over, shared a look, then nodded in agreement, approved, they said together. Roger Ya looked relieved, and they turned back to the screen. Law wasn't even going to question what he just witnessed. Arlong is still shook as he says, you broke the Kiribati? What is she to you? Luffy furiously asked. A first-rate cartographer. I will make Nami draw maps in this room forever. I'll feed her, and give her all the clothes she wants. Her life will be perfect, as long as she keeps drawing maps for me. We are Nakamas. That isn't what it means to be Nakamas. Shouted an angry phoenix, you don't use your Nakama, especially for your own benefits. Whitebeard Ya gently put a hand on Marco Ya's shoulder and said softly, we know Marco, and don't worry, Luffy will save Nami. He smiled in full confidence, and Marco Ya looked reassured by his words. Luffy suddenly kicks a desk. It flies through the wall and crashes to the ground outside. Luffy is now kicking and punching everything in the room to destroy it. Arlong is pissed off and tries to stop Luffy with his weapon, but Luffy keeps dodging and destroys more of the room. Law was slightly touched by Straw Hat Ya's actions. He was freeing Nami of her imprisonment, and his actions helped her move on from her past. Law is seeing Luffy Ya in a new light, and he was starting to think that he was understanding just what type of guy Straw Hat Ya is. Nami is seen watching the maps and desks fall from her room to the ground. She covers her mouth as she cries with gratitude in her eyes. Thank you. Law looked to the left side of the room, towards the past pirates, and he saw looks of pride, joy, and smugness. He was a little concerned about that last one since it was coming from the Pirate King, but decided he could worry about that later. Law then looked over at the other side of the room, and saw the looks of boredom, disinterest, and hunger. Law was also worried about that last one too, because it was Big Mom, but he just decided that he would pretend he didn't see anything, and look back at the screen. Arlong finally stopped Luffy by biting his neck. There were some hisses. There is blood pouring out of the wound, and Luffy grabs Arlong's nose and snaps it sideways. Arlong falls to the ground screaming in pain. What a baby! Eustacia quietly commented. Law rolled his eyes. Luffy is shown with a vicious look in his eyes. This room can't be here anymore. I'll destroy every place that she doesn't want to be kept in. Luffy all but screams out at the end. Yeah. You tell M Shrimp. Rayleigh rolled his eyes at his captain, but also seemed to agree, with the way his foot was tapping repeatedly on the ground. Arlong is starting to get back up, and Luffy makes his move. Gomu Gomu no, Luffy stretches his legs so that it breaks through the ceiling, and shoots to the sky. Enough of your insolence. Arlong says as he fixes his nose. Arlong then attacks Luffy with his teeth. Axe. Luffy's leg starts to descend, and Arlong bites into his side. There were some more hisses, and Law cringed at all the blood. Before Arlong can do too much damage, Luffy's foot slams on the back of Arlong's back, and Arlong smashes to the floor, and it cracks from the force. Holy she! Marco Ya shouted with wide eyes. Ugh. Luffy screams and pushes harder on Arlong's back, and he is sent through all the floors. Arlong Park starts to form cracks and shakes, then suddenly comes crashing down. I'm impressed, the kid is strong enough to send a fishman through multiple levels of concrete. Rayleigh Ya smirked in interest. He also just destroyed a whole building with one blow. Marco Ya stated excitedly. Luffy. Nami cries worried that Luffy got buried by rubble. When the noise stops, light starts shining through the clouds, and Luffy pops up from the rubble. Nami. Luffy suddenly yells, "You are our Nakama." Nami looks happy, and has teary eyes. Yeah. The screen fades to black, and the lights turned back on. Law was stuck in a trance at what he just witnessed. Law had to admit that it was very satisfying watching the fishman get his ass beat, but he was more in awe of Luffy Ya and his words, or the lack thereof. Even though Straw Hat Ya shouted only 5 words, they seemed to hold a lot more to them and mean more to him than what other pirates say when they say Nakama. The words were enough to understand the meaning and conviction of what Luffy Ya was trying to get across, when he shouted them at his new navigator. Bwahahaha. Garp laughed with his head tilted back, "That's my grandson for Ya." He seemed very proud of his grandson. That was very enjoyable to watch. Roger Ya commented with a satisfied grin. The red-haired man next to him nodded, with a proud smile. I am happy that Anchor saved Nami. All the past pirates nodded in agreement. I am also excited to see their journey, and other people he will defeat. The man glowed at the thought. Me too, I am curious how Luffy will fight stronger opponents. Rayleigh Ya chimed in. There was a loud rumbling sound, and everyone immediately silenced. Law felt a drop of sweat drip down his back. Everyone slowly looked to where the noise came from. I'm hungry, complained Big Mom. Everyone held their breath. They didn't want to say the wrong thing, and become the Emperor's snack. Suddenly there was a bang from above their heads, and packages fell down towards Big Mom. She swiftly caught them, and started to tear away at the packaging, and started to shove the contents in her mouth. Apparently it was sweets, because Big Mom hummed in happiness, and everyone breathed out a sigh of relief. Law heard about Big Mom's infamous hunger pains, and he certainly didn't want to witness one. Everyone started to calm down, before the lights dimmed. Law guessed that the next viewing was about to start. So, he turned his eyes towards the screen, and hoped that this was almost over. Chapter 4. Asterisk disclaimer. I don't own anything One Piece related, that belongs to Oda asterisk. I recommended watching the opening before reading this. Everyone settled in their seats as the lights dimmed. The screen lights up and shows the ocean, while guitars and drums are being played. Law had to shut his eyes for a second at the brightness. It seems like this viewing will be similar to the first one, Law thought begrudgingly. Luffy is shown smiling, while people and places are being shown behind him. Then the same happens for Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji. That is a lot of people, Marco Ya stated as he squinted at the screen. Yeah, they're probably people Luffy and his crew encountered on his journey. Marco Ya looked over at Red Hair Ya in thought before nodding in agreement. While this is happening, the Pirate King starts to narrate. Inherited wool. The destiny of the age and the dreams of the people. These are things that will not be stopped. As long as people continue to pursue the meaning of freedom, these things will never cease to be. Couldn't have said it better myself. Roger Ya exclaimed with a wide grin. Almost everyone gave the man a deadpan stare. Shanks is shown, then the Pirate King, and then the title One Piece. Huh, I didn't expect to be in this one either, Shanks Ya said with a surprised look on his face. A female's voice starts to sing. I believe in the future alone, and I don't care if other people laugh at me for it. The Going Merry is shown sailing on the ocean. Your wild running passion makes you sparkle. A sunset shows, and then you get a view of all the Straw Hats smiling on the ship. Looks like it's the same group, Rayleigh Ya said while scratching his beard. Yeah, I guess you're right. Roger Ya agreed. You're blinding me, but I still want to watch. The screen shows the ocean, and then a waterfall. Somehow you give me a sense of beauty. Luffy seems excited by this, while the other Straw Hats have a comical expression on their faces. Ha! Look at their faces. Marco Ya shouted with a laugh. The past pirates and Shanks Ya gave laughs of amusement. Law had to admit that the Straw Hats' faces did look a little comical. He was glad that he got used to the Grand Line's freaky weather pretty quickly. He guessed it also helped that he has a submarine. I'm really stuck on you. The next scene shows the Going Merry defying gravity by sailing up the waterfall. Law furrowed his eyebrows in confusion at the display. He was pretty sure that sailing up a waterfall was impossible. What the hell? Kid Ya looked bewildered. Agreed, what the hell? Marco Ya also had the same face, and now that Law looked around, almost everyone had the same expression on their face. Why are all of you so surprised? The only Marine in the room stated as he searched Law guest for another bag of crackers, you have to sail up a mountain to enter the Grand Line. True, but that makes sense, Marco Ya said, before pointing at the screen that shows a frozen screen of the Straw Hats ship sailing up a waterfall, but that doesn't. Garpia rolled his eyes and grumbled to himself before his eyes lit up in satisfaction. He pulled a bag of crackers out of nowhere, opened it, and stuffed one in his mouth, and ignored everyone else around him. Quit your squabbling, Brad, Kaido grunted, just accept that the Grand Line is unpredictable and move on. I don't want to be stuck in this room forever. It seems the beast pirate is getting impatient, Law thought warily. Zoro and Usopp have a scared look, Sanji has hearts in his eyes as Nami is clinging to him, and Luffy is smiling. The end of a dream that is like no other. The screen switches to Zoro using one sword style, while it shows his fights behind him. I'll chase it and chase it again. Then it shows Sanji using his foot fighting style, while it shows his fights behind him. Until that pragmatic moment is in my grasp. Usopp is shown using his slingshot, and his fights are shown behind him. Nami is shown using her staff, and her fights are shown behind her. Believe in Wonderland. Luffy is shown using his devil fruit, and his fights are shown behind him. It seems the brats all have their fighting style, Whitebeard Ya said with a thoughtful look. They will be an interesting crew once they master their skills. Marco Ya nodded his head in agreement. Quick flashes are shown of a little girl, 2 men, Crocus and Laboon, Baroque Works agents, and 2 giants. The share of a dream that resembles no other. Luffy's legs are shown running on a beach. I'll capture it, and capture it again. The whole crew is then seen running behind Luffy on the beach, and daytime turns into nighttime, also while a huge Sea King is seen in the background in the ocean. Law wasn't even going to question the shenanigans that he had just witnessed and move on. Law heard a quiet what the hell from his couchmate, and Law could concur with his statement. Wait, how did Dash? Roger, shut up and keep watching. It seems like Rayleigh isn't going to question things either. I'll be following that. Shanks' crew is shown a distance away, and they get closer. Warm feeling. The screen zooms into Shanks' eye and shows the journey of the Straw Hats through the East Blue. I don't care about making ends meet, or living an everyday life. Shanks is shown, missing an arm, in the ocean bleeding, holding a young crying Luffy. Whoa! What the hell was that? Marco Ya exclaimed with wide eyes. Other occupants in the room including Law himself also had the same looks. Shanks Ya closed his eyes before explaining. I saved Luffy from a Sea King when a mountain bandit kidnapped him and threw him in the ocean. Shanks Ya closed his eyes and clenched his left shoulder with his remaining hand. I don't regret what I did. And I would do it again if it meant I could save Luffy. Shanks Ya smiled as he opened his eyes and let his hand drop into his lap. Law could hear the conviction in his voice and didn't doubt the man. You lost your arm for a brat? Kaido Ya seemed to scoff at the mere thought. I'm disappointed in you, red hair. Mama. How pathetic. Big Mom Ya chimed in. It's not like I was seeking your approval, Shanks Ya said with an eye roll. The two emperors sneered at the red hair pirate before huffing and turning away. I'm proud of you, Shanks. Roger Ya smiled softly. You've grown into a wonderful man. Rayleigh Ya nodded along at his best friend's words. Law saw the red hair's cheeks dust with pink. Law smirked at Shanks Ya's embarrassed yet prideful face. It's not every day you get to see an emperor blush. Thanks, Captain. I run towards paradise. Luffy is holding his pirate flag, while it pans out to show his crew standing beside him. Believe in Wonderland. Finally, the screen shows the words One Piece in the same way the last viewing ended. The screen slowly fades to black, and the music stops. The light slowly turned back on. Well, that was something. Marco Ya deadpanned. He still seemed upset about the ship sailing up a waterfall. Not that Law could blame him. Gururera. Whitebeard Ya laughed in amusement at his son. Common Marco, aren't you having fun? The giant captain goaded with a mischievous look in his eyes. The phoenix pouted at his words and glared up at his father in suspicion. They seemed to have a staring contest before Marco Ya huffed in exasperation for smiling. Yeah, I guess I am, he begrudgingly admitted. Whitebeard Ya seemed content with his answer and gently patted Marco Ya on the head. Law feels his chest tighten and looks away from the scene. He knows how things ended up with Whitebeard Ya at the Paramount War, and he did feel some compassion for Marco Ya, but he knows that's not why his chest hurts. Law glances over to his right at the Doflamingo Ya and glares at him. Law would never forgive what he did, and he will make sure he will get revenge for Korra. Why are you glaring at the warlord? Law instantly schooled his face and looked at his couchmate. You got beef with that guy or what? Eustacia had a curious expression on his face. Something like that. Eustacia scoffed at his simple reply, but didn't push for any more details and turned away from him. The lights started to dim again and Law focused on the screen. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you liked it, subscribe to my channel for more fan fictions like this, and goodbye.